All right, so this is episode 56. Is that right, Evan?
Yep.
Episode 56 of This is Great with Steve and Nate. So we take brand new discs out to the field, we throw them a bunch of times so that we can show you guys what they fly like. We also give away a ton of stuff on this show. You might notice I'm holding an old school dismember trace from like February. We're going to give this away just to somebody who asks a good question, gives us a good comment, or some reason to give it away. We're going to give away the white one to whoever guesses the farthest backhand distance. So guess Steve or Nate, and I pointed backwards, Steve or Nate, and how far you think we threw it, and you can win the white disc. And then the blue one will also give away, the blue special edition one will also give away to somebody who asks a good question, makes a good comment, or some other reason that we come up with here before too long. All right, so again, episode 56. And we're doing the Streamline drift. Steve, tell us a little about Streamline discs in general. Where did they come from?
The original company who makes Streamline was MVP. They also, their sister company is Axiom, but MVP said, hey, we like our neutron plastic, which is very similar to Star, and they said, we want to be competitive, but not have necessarily baseline plastic. So this is still premium plastic, but they've removed the rim.
So for those of you who don't know, MVP is the company that has overmolds on all of their discs. So every MVP disc has this black overmold. Axiom is a sister company that does colored overmolds. So Streamline is their brand that took the overmold off. They're single mold discs, which is why they're so much cheaper than other companies' premium plastic, because they're doing it with the overmolds for the same cost. So now we're doing single molds with so it brings the cost down. So these are, what does Streamline Neutron normally run? Do you know off the top of your head?
Streamline, is it $12.99 that we've got it at?
Hey,
I feel like it's $11 though.
I think it is $12.99. I think Proton is $11.99.
Okay.
I'd have to actually check. I'm not positive. You've got that link in the comments. You can click and go find out. Anyway, so Streamline's a new brand. They just launched last year. They have the Pilot, they have the Trace, and now they have the Drift. So Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the Drift specifically?
Yep. So we've got a speed 7, glide of 5, high speed turn of -2, and a fade of 1. The Drift is designed for laser straight lines ending with a gentle fade and an exceptional amount of glide, providing easy distance with this highly versatile driver. The Drift has a modest rim size, slightly dome profile, and an easily activated turn for hyzer flips or big turnover shots. Be prepared to drift up the leaderboards with this easygoing fairway driver, Streamline's Neutron Drift. Wow, that's just so much confidence in that. It makes me want to throw it, man.
You've got to sell it. So 7.5, -2.1. What disc does that sound like?
Instantly, I'm thinking Innova Leopard 3 because of the 7, but then at the same time, Leopard, which is 6-speed, not far off. Legacy Patriot, right there. There was the River by
Latitude 64?
Latitude. I would say most people who throw the River would easily be able to switch to Streamline MVP and say, yes, this is exactly the disc that I was looking for. For that shot.
For me, those numbers sound really similar to a Maverick.
Oh yeah.
That we reviewed a few weeks ago, or a few months ago now. And I'm thinking it's probably somewhere along the lines of a Crave, or maybe an Insanity or an Impulse. And a JLS. Sorry, I'm not as familiar with MVP's lineup, just knowing the numbers off the top of my head. But MVP is going to start putting numbers on all of their discs. That was a new announcement.
Big step.
So, and they're releasing actually a real overstable mid in the deflector. So lots of excitement from MVP. But this is going to be, if the numbers hold true, this is kind of the like standard beginner driver that I want to hand people.
The one we send out with the brand new people.
Yeah, because you want to keep a fairly low speed, so 7's good, and it's got some turn without a lot of fade. This should go fairly straight, fairly easy. And then for power players, it's like for me, I throw a lot of that Maverick. I throw a lot of hyzer flips through tunnels or rollers with it. So it's going to have a use for a lot of players. But let's see if those numbers hold out. Oh, a lot of people ask this every single week. They ask what weight we're throwing.
Yep.
So Steve, what weights do we have on these?
This is the 174 gram. The white one is 175. We try to do our best to make sure that they're as close as possible. when you drop down into the stock, like the really light stuff in the 50s, that's when you're going to see a major difference between two discs, but keeping them this as close as possible, very similar flights. They're both the Neutron plastic, so they should have extremely similar characteristics with their flights.
Yep. Alrighty here. Traditional Steve Spikeiser.
Yes.
Early in the frame.
You know what? This is a disc that I like to start the day off with. Like, if even on a longer hole, I know my body's naturally going to be throwing on that hyzer, you know. But it's not fast enough where I'm just going to be dumping it. So just grip it, rip it on a nice hyzer, and that was a smooth flight. This thing really likes to move.
It glides.
Yeah.
Like 345 on that big of a Spikeiser with a speed 7 disc is pretty far. Now, it didn't flip out of that.
Nope.
Now here you got it a little flatter, so we're starting to see that -2 there.
But a very nice fade out of it. Again, 350. To have a disc not completely burn over with the 350 power put into the disc, that was pretty sweet. Where I'm like, all right, I can rip on it, give it some hyzer, go ahead and rip on it, but watch it fade, and you're just like, what? This doesn't make any sense.
This was super easy to put into that 350.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not putting a lot of effort into it, and it's just flipping up and gliding and getting out to 350. We'll see what else we can do as far as distance-wise, but so that's a little bit more power into that shot, still on just a little bit of hyzer, and now you're seeing that -2. It is drifting to the right pretty solidly, but it is coming back at the end, so it's not completely dumping over and rolling like, say, maybe a Sidewinder would at that kind of speed. And 383?
380 in a straight line at that.
So that's a bomb for a fairway driver. I mean, we're
just getting better.
We have been breaking records as far as distance goes in the last few weeks. We did, like, I top out at 465 or 454 now. So 383 with a speed 7 driver. It's still a long ways for a speed 7 driver to go. That's a testament to the glide. This is a huge I had a little bit of headwind on this day, so it's getting a little extra turn. So when you do actually really, really rip on this, it definitely turns and doesn't want to come back as much. But 416, again, probably 50 feet of that is right. But still, 416 with a speed 7 disc is a crush. This thing stays in the air forever. I mean, we knew that with the Trace glides really well too.
Yeah.
It's really similar. This guy just goes. It just stays in the air and holds it. I mean, anything over 400, I'm pulling out strikes anyway. Maybe I should just throw fairway. I got through the Maverick almost this far, through this far, like 400. Like, maybe I need to start busting these out for those long shots.
I don't see why not. This one's definitely trying to get the full ante out of it. I probably put it up a little too high, so it did end up just kind of having a straight finish. But the fact that it was coming out of it was surprising for most of the throws, where I had a few that just never came out of it, but when I did, I was like, oh, I thought I really got on it. So it was a really predictable, reliable fade for the amount of power that you're able to put into the disc. Like,
I will say that it is slightly touchy. When you do really get it turned, it doesn't come back.
Never.
But you've got to really rip on it to do that. I think we've got one of those we'll show you here in a second. Yeah, this guy. So I threw that really hard and flat with a little bit of crosswind, and it just kept going all the way right. Again, 390 with probably 100 feet of that being to the right. Or it's 390, you know, it probably flew 420 just all that distance, that direction. But it is, so that's, you got to be able to control that, which I think you can with this disc. But that's not about, like, there are shots where you might need that, where you might need to hold that drift all the way around. Like, if I was to throw this disc in my bag, it would be for turnover shots, or for those hyzer flip tunnel shots that we had in there. But if you get it turned hard enough, it's gonna hold that turn and not come out. Which, that said, makes it probably not my first choice of forehand driver. I usually like something more stable. So that's probably 60-70% power on a forehand, not trying to overcook it too much. And on that kind of power, it flew pretty well. 297 with a fairway driver. I probably maxed out around 350 with like distance driver sidearm. So 297 on a forehand that just flexes like that is pretty solid. Again, I'm not ripping it as hard as I can because it can't handle that. So a little bit more hyzer, a little bit more pop on that one, and you definitely see that turn. That almost got Steve.
I've gotten pretty good at judging certain discs. After you see a few throws with it, because the disc is predictable, you start to see they're like, all right, there's no wind. I think I can stay here and I'll be safe.
So what Steve is saying is eventually he's going to misjudge something and catch it in the face.
Pretty much.
But yeah, anyway, again, not my first choice of sidearm disc, but if I've got kind of this flip up line, I might throw it there. It can handle a little bit of sidearm power, just not a ton. I think we got one more Steve flick. All the hyzer. But you kind of rolled your wrist.
Yeah, that was definitely a wrist roll. I've been getting a little more used to throwing a flick with a hyzer, but it is pretty touchy when it comes to the amount of power you're putting in there. Mm-hmm. But I've actually been using them a lot lately for basically getting out of trouble shots where I need it to kind of hold that. Like, I just don't have any backhand hyzer line, so I throw the forehand hyzer, basically. So
it might not be the worst disc for someone newer with lower arm speed to learn how to flick. It's not going to be your baseball player crusher flick disc, but it's solid when you need it to be. So this was just me trying to throw an Annie in that crosswind, not intending it to be a roller, but I could actually see this being a good roller disc. So put it on that Annie angle, pop it down, it'll hit and roll. The grass is kind of thick there. It was pretty steamy, so it wasn't going to roll super well. But I think it would be a really solid roller disc in general if you're wanting to learn rollers. All right, so Steve, we had the numbers were 7.5, -2.1. How do you feel about those?
I wouldn't change a thing. I completely agree with the 1 fade. I agree with the 5 glide. I don't think it's any faster than a 7, but the rim is definitely not a mid-range rim, so it's definitely
it's fairway driver.
It's definitely faster than a 5. So I don't have any quarrel with those numbers.
I might go ahead and bump that 5 up to a 6 on the glide because it just goes. And -2.1 is probably pretty close. I mean, you could argue maybe it's -2.5 and maybe it's 1.5, but MVP doesn't do half numbers, so
Yet.
Well, actually, they do. The deflector has, I think, 3.55.
Yeah.
So, that's really arbitrary, and it's depending on your power level. So, those are pretty spot on. I think there's a good representation of what the disc can do. But yeah, so I think those numbers are good. So, Steve, how do you see people using this? Who's this disc good for?
If getting to 300 with a high-speed driver is difficult, or you're putting absolute 100% power into it, I think this disc could do it. I think you'd be surprised how a slower disc, you end up being able to get it so much farther with the same with less effort, actually, because you can't throw it super hard. But so someone who is growing out of mid ranges, or you give someone your mid range when they're first playing with you and they're turning it over, they're like, oh, I don't want, and then step it up to this. The nice understable is the way to go to learn the game. This is an excellent disc to start learning.
This is going to be this is going to start being one of my recommendations for beginning players. Might find a space on this beginner shelf eventually. It's great for slower arm speed players. This is going to be your go-to fairway driver. But I mean, heck, Drew Gibson is ripping the crap out of a Leopard 3 on tour right now, and he's one of the most powerful players in the game. So you can use this for, I would use this for a lot of flip-up hyzers, turnovers, and rollers. So depending on, it's a great disc that every power level can find a use for. It's just going to be a different use depending on your power level. But a great all-around disc. Streamline has been killing it with everything they've made so far. Super excited about it. Great disc. Go check it out. We have tons of the special editions left if you want to get on those with that interesting trifoil stamp. And I've got a good chunk of the stock ones with more on the way.